We're on our last session for the first day of the Sri Lanka Economic Summit, and this is session 4. The session is dealing with leveraging technology to drive economic revival. I'd like to introduce our panel. Two of them would be joining us digitally, Mr. Arvind Gupta, who's the head and co-founder of Digital India Foundation, and Jayantha De Silva, chairman of the Information and Communication Technology Agency, that is ICTA. And with us today is Mr. Bingumal Devanatantri, Chief Executive Officer of Standard Chartered Bank, Chinti Veerasinghe, CEO of Mitra Innovation Digital Solutions. We have Mr. Jeffrey Zuffer, founder and CEO of PICME, and our moderator, Riaz Muller, Managing Partner, KPMG Sri Lanka. Now that we've done the introductions of our panelists as well as our speakers, I would like to invite the head and co-founder of Digital India Foundation, Mr. Arvind Gupta, to begin his presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm, joining you virtually from the northern part of India to share today the experiences that that we have had in India and how those could be very pertinent and applicable to Sri Lanka and its roadmap to revival and really taking control of a lot of part of their economic destiny. Using digital transformation. So a lot of experiences that I'm going to share are, as I said, from India. India being a large country is a diverse set of people, many languages. So generally I try to say this upfront because a lot of lessons that we have had in India are applicable to other countries because India presents with this 1.3 billion people, a lot of diversity, complexity, and if India can do it, a lot of other nations can also do it. Today we are at a point in human civilization that the fourth industrial revolution is really upon us. And with the fourth industrial revolution, which is the combination of data, connectivity, and power, computing power, that we are seeing transform businesses, transform governments, transform startups. This is an era that we are really witnessing right now. And why this is important is because just about a year ago, we saw a very critical point in human internet reach, which is more than 50% of human beings now have internet access. So this is a revolution that is happening right in front of us. And the second point is that we are seeing, as we talk today, platforms, big platforms that operate in India and Sri Lanka and elsewhere in the world, really becoming very, very big. We have these 5 platforms from the US. We have done a lot of work on them, and 4 very dominant platforms from China. This 9 big, large conglomerates, which in the digital domain are called platforms, are really controlling the world. And one thing that is really underlying all of them is the amount of data that they actually know about us as consumers, as citizens, is more than anybody else does. And that is what is really making this new economy a data-driven economy. Google is no longer a search company, it's the biggest data company in the world. And the fourth industrial revolution is revolutionizing everything as we speak today, whether it's government, governance, financial inclusion, education, healthcare, environment, you name it, and it's actually disrupting that. And this is the background really to getting into why India decided to take the fourth industrial revolution in its stride and actually solve some of the most complex problems facing its own citizens. And I'm assuming this income pyramid will have different numbers for Sri Lanka, but will be very, very similar. The similarities will be in the ratios between different numbers. The bottom will always, like in India, is the biggest. The 103 million families in India, the 80 million families are really just above the poverty line is the 80 million, and below the poverty line is 103 million families. And if you take about 5.5 people per family, you're talking about 500 million people, below the poverty line, and about 80 million people just above the poverty line, and 50 million people, which is the middle class, and the 7 million people, which is households which are really rich. Now, why I present this slide is from an economic perspective. The digital story that we have to think about, different from those 9 platforms, is bottom up. The 9 platforms, the global platforms, really target the blue, the green, and they start moving from there down. Whereas we have to think about how do you take everybody in society, every single citizen together, and transform their lives, really the challenging parts of societal transformation. And that is the theme that what we have done in India, which is a lessons from India, is to how do you use technology to transform from bottom up the whole citizen pyramid. What we did in India is the story of building our own platform. And that's what I want to share with the audience today, is that countries need to start looking at encouraging startups, encouraging businesses, but also encouraging themselves as governments to see how they can build and control their own platforms to transform the 3 or 4 different distinct things that I just talked about, which is government, businesses, small businesses, small medium enterprises, and startups, all alike. And the approach we had is to, as I said, build your own platform, which is called the India Stack. And what is the stack? It is nothing but different apps, open apps working together. And let me explain that to you and why this is so important. Number 1 part of the stack is an identity stack. An identity is something that a digital identity, which is biometrically verifiable, is something which is so essential to every citizen of India. And this is a very basic thing. And why I presented the income pyramid is that we ensure that the bottom of the pyramid could understand what a digital identity is. And for that, no signatures, no digital dongles, biometrics. The 2 iris scans, 10 fingerprints were used to create and give them an identity. Of the 1.3 billion people, before this digital identity layer of the stack we built out, almost more than half, actually 65% of Indians did not have an identity, a unique identity. They had multiple identities or some form of identity which did not work when they crossed borders or went from one city to another, or banks would not take it. And see the impact of that. The first thing we did with this digital identity is actually combine that with electronic KYC, which is the second part of the stack, and offered every single citizen of India a bank account. This number, of course, is much larger when you put it in context, but you have to imagine that every single person, again, 60% of Indians didn't have access to banking. Today, every single Indian at a household level, eligibility level, has access to banking. Everybody has a bank account. And that is transformation that we just did in 2 years, from 2014 to 16, back on the back of the digital identity and electronic KYC layer that is part of what I call the India Stack. And today, this is the account. So and the big reason with this account was also policy disruption, which was making sure that this account could be opened for everybody by any bank, could also have zero balance. So this does not require you to have a 10,000 LKR balance or 20,000 LKR balance. Zero balance is fine. It's a banking right. Every bank has had to open these zero balance bank accounts. And today, because of that, 410 million bank accounts in India have been opened for using this stack. And almost, as I said, 99.9% coverage in India at a household level of people having bank accounts. What it has also done is this has enabled the digital economy, which I'll talk about, because now you have a place where value can be stored and people can use this value to transact, to do savings, and the data that is coming in and out of this can be used to give them better credit, better lending. India's identity project is really core to, to not only just the banking that I talked about, but really everything else. Telecom, we have the lowest telecom rates in the world today, highest tele density, and smartphones. Really, from about 100 million smartphone connections about 6-7 years ago to almost 750 million smartphones at the lowest data cost in the world. It's because of having our own stack available to us, our own platform available to us, and I'll explain to you how the telecom costs have come down. The third part of the stack, which is a very important part of how a nation needs to use digital transformation, is having your own payment system. So identity, which is presenceless, eKYC, which is paperless. The third is payments. Now, payments is something that India has made, again, from ground up, our own payments network. And this payment system, friends, is actually revolutionizing how you transact money, small, big, anything that you want. All is absolutely instantaneous and almost zero cost, both to the sender and to receiver. Now, for remittances, for making payments, for transactions, no merchant loses 2% or 1.5% of what is called MDR, the merchant discount rate. So digital payments get encouraged, and transferring money from one bank account to another bank account or taking remittances, it's all zero cost. And this is again something that India put as part of a stack. So we no longer depend only on Visa and MasterCard as a payment network. We have our own payment network called UPI, and this is the amazing part. 4 years ago, around this time, December, 4 years ago, this used to do. India did something called what is called demonetization, and this payment system used to do about 100,000 transactions a month. In the last month, this finished with 2 billion transactions, and the month of November, which just ended yesterday, we are estimating it to finish at about 2.2 to 2.4 billion transactions a month. This is the pervasiveness of digital payments that is transforming payments, lending, e-commerce, everything. It's just about everything you can imagine. Um, what does this do to the startup ecosystem? And I'll give you examples from all different verticals that I explained. Uh, Number one is the government. The government is really using this India stack, the stack of identity, paperless, and payments to its advantage. Um, Multiple government schemes would have the same beneficiary listed or people who are fakes or ghosts. By embedding an ID in all the government system, a digital identity, it ensured that all the fakes, duplicate, ghost, all went out of the system. And by using our own payment system, now transfer money not to a middleman, but actually directly into a citizen's bank account. India has completely transformed, the government of India has completely changed the way it does what is called citizen welfare. We have a program called DBT, Direct Benefits Transfer. Um, 800 million people were given some sort of support during the COVID pandemic lockdown using the system. So this is the kind of speed and scale it has. And what it has done is over time, saved the government more than $25 billion. The total cost of building this India stack is approximately $2 billion. So if you can imagine $2 billion spent in a population of 1.3 billion people, has saved the government $25 billion so far. I think it's the best ROI a government can expect. And this will keep going on because every year your tax dollars, the revenue that the government is getting is being used very, very judiciously and covering a lot more citizens that it was covering earlier. There were numerous studies in India that were done, which said that if $100 billion is spent on welfare, the actual consumer only receives $15 billion. $85 billion is lost in translation. Today, confidently, we can say that if $100 billion leaves the government, all $100 billion of that reaches the right consumers, the right entitlement, the right scholarship holder, the right mothers who are giving nutrition support to children, or in health, any for vaccinations, whatever it is, it reaches the right person. And during times of COVID, we have done extensive research on that it prevented a lot of queues outside job centers or food coupons. Money was transferred directly into the bank accounts, and they could put it to use during these COVID times. Um, and this is an example what it enables: banking at your doorstep. So same thing with this whole stack. Today, you can actually just use your fingerprint as your identity and as your bank account identifier and your password, and you just give your fingerprint and you can withdraw money using a mobile bank. So India, we have moved from philosophy of uh, a lot more banking, less banks, and more banking is desirable. You may not have a physical brick and mortar bank. Uh, the second set of consumers have been, for example, startups and uh, and um, and all these new innovation companies. And because of this India stack, apart from the government, what it creates is like a foundation layer available to everybody. And this foundation layer then is used to solve the problems on above the foundation layer. So nobody's the founders, the startup innovators don't spend time solving the basic problem of identity or KYC or onboarding, and onboarding at a very high cost. This whole solution is an open solution available to everybody. So and numerous studies have shown this, that the cost of per startup in India is the lowest in the world today. If it takes about, this is the amount of funding, about $100 billion worth of funding is supporting about 77,000 startups in the US. About $19 billion of funding is supporting about 40,000 startups in India. So about one fifth the funding is supporting almost half the amount of startups in India. So it's 2.5 times more cost efficient to do a startup in India. And that's a combination of the labor human labor arbitrage, but also because this foundation layer is available to all startups. And this is an interesting case study. And I know there are a lot of startups, and that's part of the new economy that people have to think about how they can enable startups or the ecosystems within their nations. This is a company which has done two things using India Stack. Number one, brought down its customer acquisition cost. A telecom company has done that, which called Reliance Jio in India. And this is a brokerage firm, online brokerage firm that got set up. It has brought the cost of customer acquisition is one of the highest cost of onboarding a customer, from $25 US. Because of this presence-less eKYC layer, the cost has come down to $1. And this brokerage has used the same thing that what the telecom players did to onboard customers. What it has done is it has been able to compete at almost zero cost to the consumer, and has changed the pecking order. So a great startup success, which has really taken on the biggest banks in India from a brokerage perspective, the biggest brokerage houses, and has actually got more consumers onboarded, and that's a classic battle of new age versus old age, and completely use this stack to transform their businesses. Uh, I'll give one last example and I'll leave it there. So governments, businesses, startups have really benefited. What is the big story here? Payments. The payment thing is something that I think is a very important part of economic revival. If you may tell me, if more and more digital payments start happening, two things start happening. A data funnel starts getting created for your own consumption, so you can do better lending. You know who to lend better to. And this is why a lot of people coined the new term, data is the new oil. And this is the reason that you need to have your own identity systems, your own payment system. The second thing is pure economics, is GDP. We have done a maths in India that the having your own payment system which is a 2% cost coming down to almost 0.2%, let's say, the savings to GDP is very, very high. And this is money that remains in India, in Sri Lanka, or remains in India. So a very, very strong case for economic case for building your own payment systems, controlling your own destiny. Data, GDP, and overall savings to the merchants and digitalization of the whole value chain. Uh, I'm going to just, because my time is about to be up, I'm just going to leave some thoughts here that I think the most important lessons from the India story, which Sri Lanka needs to can learn from the frameworks and adapt to its own needs, is that um, countries have very, very young population. They are all going mobile first. Ensure that the agile policy making assist the build out of platforms which are indigenously made, are open in nature, and are used with a vision of not only being used, which are made with a vision of not only to be used by governments, but by startups, by telecom companies, by financial institutions, by businesses, all alike. And these platforms, these technologies are bottom up and serve every single person in the society, and are really built in to all approaches that as you go forward. So I know my 20 minutes is up. So thank you with that, and I hand it back to the organizer, to the host.